Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Lambert and welcome to my older adult presentation. For this project, I interviewed my aunt. For confidentiality purposes, we will call her Sandy. Sandy was born on April 14th, 1947 in Pennsylvania. She is 74 years old and currently lives not far from where she grew up. She is my aunt through marriage as her mom married my dad's dad. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to discuss Erik Erikson's fourth stage of development, industry versus inferiority, in relation to Sandy. As well, I will later discuss Piaget's four stages of cognitive development and apply his concrete operational stage to my aunt's life as well. Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development focus on the fact that each person's cognitive and personality developments happen in a predetermined order from the moment that they are born through to death. Within this theory, we as humans work through different crises in 8 stages of life. In each stage, we are presented with a psychosocial crisis, and depending on the experience within that crisis and whether or not we complete the critical task involved, we can positively or negatively affect our personality development, as well as our social and emotional development throughout a lifetime. After interviewing my aunt, I chose to dive deeper into the fourth stage of Erikson's psychosocial development theory, which is the industry versus inferiority stage. In this stage, children are learning, interacting with new peers, and trying to accomplish things they have never done before, or never tried before either. If a child is being praised and encouraged to continue learning and trying new things, they will learn to be industrious. If they aren't receiving the support and encouragement they need, they will start to feel inferior, hindering their potential for growth in the future. School becomes very important as both teachers and classmates are helping or hindering their development of self-esteem. They might compare themselves to their peers as well, causing confidence or inadequacy, depending if they have stronger or weaker abilities than the others. Parents are also very important in this stage, needing to provide support and unconditional love, certainly giving more encouragement to those already feeling inferior. Erikson's fourth stage, industry versus inferiority, spans from ages 5 to 12. The first 2 major events to happen in my aunt's life happened during this time frame. The first thing that really rocked her world was the death of her father. He died in September of 1956 at the age of 34 when Sandy was only 9. He was a crew chief for the Chestnut Ridge Railway and wasn't supposed to be working that Friday night, but he was covering for a friend. Her father was in the caboose and the car in front of the caboose started to shake. He had everyone jump out before him and they survived. However, as he jumped out, the boxcar fell and crushed him. He left behind Sandy, Sandy's mom, and Sandy's younger sister, my other aunt, who was 5 at the time. The second major event, which was subsequent to the train wreck, was the lawsuit that Sandy's mom filed less than a year later. Both daughters were put on the witness stand to testify. They were asked to point out mom and were then asked where dad was, to which Sandy answered, dead. The next question was, what happened to him? And she had to explain what she knew about his death. She was then asked if she was sad or scared. The thing she remembers most from the trial was the big ugly wheel from the train, which caused the accident. This was very traumatizing for her, on top of just losing her father. It was tough, but Sandy's mom went on to win the lawsuit. In this stage of Sandy's life, she relayed many more challenges than accomplishments. The challenges she faced were at home as well as in school. Mom was going through her own emotions and really wasn't emotionally or physically able to take care of the girls. She would leave the girls alone in the house and, in Sandy's words, go for runs into the woods at night. Each night, one of Sandy's aunts would stay over to make sure Mom didn't commit suicide. They were always sent with leftovers after Sunday lunch at an aunt's house so that they would have food to eat for the week. She also felt like she had to take care of her sister. Her sister stopped talking, and when she did, all Jane can remember, her sister stopped talking, and the only times that she did, all Jane can remember her saying is, I'm waiting for my daddy. Sandy was having self-esteem issues at school. One of the most memorable moments of feeling inferior was a boy in her class calling her half an orphan. Another point, on Father's Day, the teachers would always say, we're making Father's Day cards, and they never addressed it to Sandy in any other way. as in saying, oh, we're making an uncle card or a positive male figure card. She was also at a Girl Scout event one Father's Day, and she peed on the floor because she was so anxious. After that, she was understandably embarrassed. The only positive school-aged moment she discussed in our interview was that after she peed herself, there was one friend who tried to comfort her. She was also going through her own emotional trauma of losing her dad, which in and of itself is a huge event. Sandy also discussed worry about whether he knew she loved him. She said that she had no major accomplishments except that financially the family accomplished something because they won the lawsuit. Everything from the industry versus inferiority stage involved the accident. She has no good memories and was only going through the motions. The psychosocial crisis from Erikson's fourth stage is industry versus inferiority. As previously discussed, if we don't resolve the crisis of industry versus inferiority, we will start to feel less confident, with lower self-esteem than the other children in this stage who have positively resolved the task at hand. Inferiority can lead to social and emotional turmoil throughout life. If resolved, this stage can lead to confidence and a yearning to try and succeed at new things. Now I will walk through different biopsychosocial factors at that time that I believe inhibited Sandy's resolution of this stage. Culturally, her family and community did not discuss emotions. You just had to push through whatever you're feeling. Sandy has never been to a therapist or counselor to discuss anything that has happened during this stage in her life. I believe age had everything to do with the events that inhibited the resolution of this psychosocial crisis. Had Sandy been older and already resolved this conflict, it might not have affected her so much later in life. However, I read an article for my annotated bibliography by Vassar and Constantinople that touched on the fact that even some college students hadn't resolved this stage. So who's to know when the best time would be to lose their parent? Although I can positively say it's never. I think developmentally, Erikson's theory can work in perfect cases, but no case is perfect. Trauma such as this would hinder anybody, no matter their stage in life. Depending on their circumstances, if they are 40 and haven't resolved this conflict, it will affect them too. I believe gender also had an impact as well. Living in an all-female household where the father was the breadwinner, that meant that when he was gone, there wasn't a steady stream of income. Sandy remembers one day the teachers took up a collection and gave them the money and said, "Here, you're going to need this." Her education shaped her for the better. It gave her an opportunity to excel in areas with positive role models. I am not sure Sandy would feel she was oppressed in any way, but I believe she was unfairly expected to take care of her little sister when Mom went off at night. Mom didn't treat the children with much love or care at that point in time, and that caused Sandy distress. Both children suppressed their feelings, and because at that time Grandma couldn't handle her own feelings, she couldn't handle her children's as well. When applying multi-systems lens to Sandy's specific biopsychosocial experiences, there are a few different institutions that had impacts on her. At this point in Sandy's life, I believe her family had the biggest impact on her. From what we discussed in our interview, she doesn't remember any good from this time period. She remembers abandonment and loneliness. This was a very conflicting time for Sandy. During the industry versus inferiority stage of her life, she wasn't receiving any positive reinforcement for her initiatives at home, but she believes her teachers were good to her, but only when it came to their job, which was teaching. The accident happened on a Friday night, and after the funeral on Monday, they were back in school on Tuesday. The teachers put her and her sister in the hall to catch up on the homework that they missed. Subsequently, my aunt went on to be a teacher, and if this would have happened to one of her students, she said that she would have sent them immediately to a counselor and would have made sure the child was getting the attention and care that they needed before worrying about school. Sandy's teachers were good at their job and were positive and encouraging in schoolwork, but they ignored the trauma and the emotional turmoil that the girls were going through. In terms of peers at school, Sandy was also inhibited from achieving her potential, as the other kids thought of her as different, since she didn't have a father. She was also inhibited when the teachers talked about Father's Day to her, in an appropriate manner for someone who recently lost their father. Sandy was made to feel inferior by her classmates because she was different. And that relates to an article I wrote about by Sudfeld, Peterson, and Krell for my annotated bibliography. It discussed whether Holocaust survivors performed better in a work environment because they were made to feel inferior during the Holocaust. This turned out not to be the case, and that most of the survivors eventually resolved their industry versus inferiority stage positively, not having feelings of inferiority. The two situations can't be compared as they are both tragic in their own right, but I think it's worth a mention that Sandy went on to be confident and successful in her life despite the children in her class pushing her towards inferiority because she was different. I do believe she has some senses of inferiority still at this stage in life, but only when protecting her emotions. She was hurt so badly by the death, she doesn't want to feel that hurt again. I don't believe the social forces during the 1950s helped my aunt's aspirations or opportunities because everyone was very hush-hush and kept things private within their families. She didn't feel she could reach out for help, so Sandy kept everything to herself. Besides her Girl Scout friend at school, one of the other positive recollections she had from the stage had to do with one of the ministers at church, whose name she remembered. He would come to their home and just sit there with Grandma and the girls. He didn't say much, but his presence was helpful. He came frequently, held their hands, and just showed that he cared about them. Although there were many factors I believe working against her resolution of this crisis, there were a few small things that she still remembers in a positive light from that time. Piaget was another theorist who specialized in cognitive development. He theorized humans are finished developing at the end of their teen years, and that by the age of 17, they should be able to function as adults because of the complexity of experiences we go through as children and adolescents. In applying this to Sandy's life, and in correlation to the major event of her father dying, Sandy would have been in the concrete operational stage. In the concrete operational stage, which is from ages 7 to 11, a child should be able to look at the whole picture of a situation or event, not just their own particular perspective. A child should also be able to understand logic, realizing that certain actions might have certain consequences or effects on your life. When Sandy was in this stage and after her father died, she was able to use logic and look at all perspectives of the whole picture. She was able to look past her own emotions and see how everyone around her was feeling. She took those conclusions and realized that she had to be the glue to hold her family together, and that's what she did. Had she not already understood logic and bigger picture, she might have fallen into a dark hole. In this stage, there was also an instance that really struck me that she spoke about. She talked about a time when there was a man at the front door, and when she wouldn't open it, he chased her to the side door and then the basement door. She thought logically in this situation, understanding the consequences of opening the door. The man knew the girls were alone and was probably going to harm them, had he been let in. This was very rational thinking of a girl who was under 11 years old. Both Piaget and Erikson have brought a lot of excellent knowledge and theories to modern-day development, but there are always drawbacks and limitations to each theory. With Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, the biggest limitation that I believe resonates with my aunt's life are the questions referring to identity formation. Identity versus identity confusion is stage 5, which covers ages 12 to 18. However, what about the adults who find a different identity later in life and develop new understandings of life due to certain experiences that have happened over time? Another limit to Erikson's theory is that he doesn't take into account culture and backgrounds of each individual. In this case, Sandy didn't resolve stage 4 during the allotted time period due to a tragic event that hindered her development. However, she did resolve it later on. So due to her background and experiences, she wasn't on Erikson's path of development because of individual differences in her life. Erikson gives us a perfect developmental path, but it is rare to resolve any crisis in the stages he has created. This leads into another limit where Erikson is mainly focused on the development of infants and children, not paying much attention to adulthood, although claiming his theory covers the lifetime. Erikson's theory of psychosocial development also relates more to males, and he, like Freud, believes that the only differences in development were based on biology. Lastly, for practitioners to test Erikson's theory, all interpretations and thoughts about each stage must be agreed upon completely. There is no room for different interpretations in order to get a complete, accurate measurement. Societal norms and expectations about developmental processes that should occur at various ages are always changing. Because of economic conditions, the technological advances, expanding employment opportunities for women, and changing attitudes about marriage, many young people put these activities off until later years.